Hey, friends. Thank you so much for being here. The episode actually got cut off a little bit earlier than I wanted it to. There was a nice little goodbye from Tom in there. So I guess since we didn't get to hear it on the episode, we should probably hear from him now. Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you.
So good to see you too. You are in wonderful Alaska. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I'm at my daughter's house right now in Alaska.
How's the weather?
Oh, it's rained a lot, but we've had some nice days too.
That's great. Great to hear. I'm sure it is a lot cooler than it is here in San Antonio, even though we've had a little cold spell, but nothing like where you are.
It hit 60 degrees here yesterday, and that was really nice.
Nice. Nice. Very good. Well, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you again so much for the interview. I really appreciate your insights and I appreciated our conversation. How are you feeling after watching the episode?
It's always a little bit emotional. Kind of brings me back, makes me think about things. When I watch it myself, it doesn't seem like it's me, so it's a little weird.
Yeah, it's hard to get used to seeing yourself on episodes. I know for me, I do not like to rewatch episodes that I've been on, especially things from like a year ago or so. I'm like, oh, I can't. I don't know. It just feels weird to me.
Well, you're a pro, and you always do really well.
Oh, thanks. I still feel like a beginner. I still feel out of my element. It's still a learning curve, especially the technology stuff. But I don't know. I think done is better than perfect. So that's what I keep shooting for. So what have you been up to lately? We would love to hear.
Oh, well, I've been doing a lot of fishing.
Excellent. Oh, yes, I saw you sent me a picture. I could not believe how big that fish was. What kind of fish was that?
I don't know if that was the one of the halibut that we caught or the salmon.
That was big. I don't think it was a salmon, but it was, I don't know, maybe it was, but it was like 2.5 feet long. That was a huge fish.
Yeah, probably the salmon.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Goodness. So I'm interested to hear, what are you writing about these days?
I'm kind of going through the trial day by day. Um,
And you're
I think,
talking about Chad's trial, right?
yes.
Okay.
Uh, I'm using uh, the testimony in Chad's trial to kind of go back and tell the story as I know it. So a
Yeah.
particular testifies, and then I'll go back and tell the story about how things happened when they happened. I'm kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit of a struggle. I'm going back and forth, kind of working through things.
Yeah. Well, if you ever need to, bounce things off somebody, I would love to talk about it. I was looking the other day at all of my notes, as I was watching the trial. It seems like I had so many thoughts at the time and things I wanted to talk about, but by the time that the day was over, I was so emotionally drained that I couldn't imagine making yet another video to rehash all of the things. So I only got to it maybe a couple of days out of the whole trial that I got to really get my thoughts out of my head, but all my notes are still there, and keep looking at them thinking, "Well, now it's too late for me to do anything with them." So, if you ever wanna chat about trial days,
Oh, I would
I would.
love to have you read what I've written so far. At some point, I'm not quite ready for that yet.
Yeah, I would love to.
And when you're going back and looking at your notes, are they hard to decipher?
Sometimes they are because sometimes I was taking notes so quickly that my writing got messy. Um, but I tried to be really good about, um keeping the time, like, writing down the minute of, the trial because I was watching a lot on the live stream, and so I would write down whatever minute was we were on at the live stream when something happened. So I would write a heading of whoever was testifying, and then I would write the minute that I saw something or heard something that I wanted to unpack, and I would write a little note next to it. So sometimes if I haven't been able to decipher the note, I'll just go back to the video and rewatch it a little bit, but I haven't done a lot of that because since the trial's been over, I was just so glad when it was over. Um, I think the one testimony that I keep coming back to that I want to go back and comment on is Emma Daybell's. That was the one for me that was the hardest and also the most compelling to talk about. There's
There's,
so much to go through there.
yeah, it's a lot.
I
There's
I'll
different aspects of her testimony that are interesting to me.
Yeah. Can you share maybe just a thought or 2?
Well, it's just her relationship with her father, how
Yeah.
much influence he had over her, he has had over her, how much influence he still has over her. Um, was she telling any truth at all? Um, I would really like to know where her mind is after the trial was over. Why didn't she come back and testify in the sentencing phase?
Mm.
She would do that, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me too, that they had an opportunity to do some mitigation, and they didn't do any.
Yeah,
And I found that so odd because from my perspective, I guess if I was on Chad's team, I would think that talking to his children or talking to his parents, and I mean, his mom testified, but basically testified for the prosecution, so that was a little bit confusing. And then, there were some allegations about Garth's testimony in the grand jury that they possibly considered him some charges for him. I don't know, there was just so much that was confusing to me about all of that, that I still have just kind of running around in my brain. So, I'm really interested to read your book and to see how you sort of characterized all of those things.
so I have a lot of questions. I would love to have a conversation with Emma
Oh,
or
yeah.
them. So far, they haven't allowed that. They probably won't. So I kind of secondhand information, I guess. But
Yeah, I can't imagine any of the Daybell children being willing to speak with any of us who are trying to understand things from a healthy perspective. I feel so much compassion for them because I think Chad did and does influence them so much. I think it's hard for them to know what is real and what isn't real.
I,
So, go ahead.
I think you're right about that. And I think I wasn't 100% convinced of that until I heard them testify. But once I heard them testify, I realized the influence that he still has over them is something that normal people can't comprehend. I don't think it's amazing.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before with the Cox kids and sort of the mental strength that it takes to admit to yourself that your parents are unhealthy, because all of us want to believe our parents. I When we grow up, we think our parents are superheroes. We think they're infallible. We believe everything that they say. We believe that they know everything, that they have all the answers. And I think it's shocking for a child when we find out that's not the case, especially if our parents aren't forthcoming with us, and if they don't say, "Hey, I make mistakes too, I don't know everything, sometimes I get it wrong." I think it's shocking for a kid when they find out that their parent makes mistakes, and then to make the second leap to say, "Not only did they make mistakes, but they made choices that actually harmed me." That's a
Right?
really hard thing for a kid or even a young adult or even an older adult who's never faced it to really accept that as reality. It's really hard to do that,
And
speaking
uh,
from experience.
yeah, and this is the most extreme example imaginable of that, right? And I think Garth and Emma are adults now, and they must be coming to some um, conclusions in their mind about that. They must be coming to some realization, and they're going to at some point if they haven't already. They're going to have to confront this. They're going to have to realize what their father has done and where they stand with him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's very true. I wonder how far along in that process they are. I think that's one of my curiosities. The other thing is, with their dad in jail and their mom deceased, obviously, they don't really have an anchor to go to. And by, most accounts, they're cut off from, Heather Daybell and her family and from the other relatives that they could maybe rely on that they don't, because I think probably Chad has poisoned them against those people and said, "Oh, they're dark, don't associate with them." So, I wonder if in the quiet moments that they start to question some of their dad's motives and realize, like, he's been convicted in a court of law now, all of this evidence against them, or are they still opting towards the sort of persecution complex that so many Mormon people have about anybody who questions their beliefs? I don't know, that's one of the outstanding questions that I have.
I'm just guessing that sitting through the trial, having to actually testify at the trial has kind of opened their minds some, and hopefully it started the process for them to think things out for themselves. And the family is there for them, from what I understand, and that's the only thing I think that can help those people is the family. And hopefully they'll open up. They don't have to open up to me or anybody else, but hopefully they'll open up to the family.
Yeah,
And
to someone. Or maybe they'll, there will be a trusted counselor or therapist or even church leadership or somebody that they're willing to talk to, because at some point, you know, when you're exposed to such trauma, your body starts to kind of shut down on you, and you either get really sick or you start having panic attacks or something happens. And I think it's the unfortunate truth that sometimes it takes a really massive event, like a serious illness, for people to wake up from their delusion.
yeah, I think you're right.
It's a hard contemplation. Well, channel members, chatters, this is your chance to ask Tom some questions about whatever you would like to ask about. Now, Tom, I would, if I were you, reserve the right to not answer certain things if there's something you don't want to talk about. Certainly, if there are things in the book that you want to keep under wraps until it gets published, I totally understand that. But as a juror who was, of course, you were there every single day for Lori Vallow Daybell's trial, sitting and serving there. And then you were there for quite a lot of Chad's trial as well, right? Were you there every day for Chad's trial?
I was there every day right up until the day of the verdict. I
Oh,
had,
that's right.
yeah, I had commitments and I could not be there, and it drove me crazy. So I missed that, and I missed the sentencing.
Yeah, nobody thought that the sentencing was going to happen on a weekend, for sure.
The timing was bizarre, the whole thing. It's
It
just,
really was.
yeah, I tried to predict it, and I guessed wrong.
Well, I don't think anybody could have predicted the way that it happened because, first of all, I mean, I think we all sort of had speculations about how long the defense was gonna go on. Um, but I don't think any of us realized exactly the amount of time it was gonna take, because John Pryor was saying, "Oh, he needed weeks and weeks." It ended up just being a few days. And then it just ended up that the jury was deliberating and, they came to a verdict, and then the sentencing phase started immediately, and so they did the sentencing over the weekend, which just was crazy to me. I never thought in a million years that that would happen that way.
Yeah, I didn't either. Um, yeah, I thought Pryor would have a lot more. He said he was going to have a lot more than what he had, and he
Yeah,
said at the phase he was going to bring in witnesses, and he didn't. So
right, right, and I wonder too about what what was the reasoning for that, and why did he not bring as many witnesses as he said he was going to? I suspect there were some people, now this is speculation on my part 100%, but I suspect there were some people on the witness list that were on the witness list just because he wanted to keep them out of court, and
yeah,
that he never intended to call them actually as witnesses. So,
yeah,
anyway, I don't I guess I don't have anything else to say about that other than just that we had no idea, we couldn't predict it, and I actually wanted to fly back in for the verdict and the sentencing, and there just was no way to get it done. It just happened so fast.
yeah, yeah. I thought he would call. I thought Garth and Emma would come back. Um, And I just wonder if maybe after testifying, they just said, no, I'm not doing it. I just don't.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's possible. I wonder, though, about the fact that the defense did not present any mitigation evidence whatsoever, not a single witness, and I wonder if that was a conscious choice or if some of the people who had agreed to make statements withdrew at the last minute, I don't know.
It could have been both. I mean, I really felt like I could feel um, both Chad and Mr. Pryor kind of giving up toward the end. I think they just kind of lost hope and kind of decided to just go with whatever.
Yeah, I do remember the only time okay, so I when I went to trial the one day that I went, the main thing that I observed about Chad was I felt like he was very smug.
Yeah.
He just seemed like he was above all of this, like, "I'm the prophet. I had these revelations from God. You can't tell me any differently." That's kind of what I felt like, and the only time I saw him without that demeanor was after the sentencing was read, and he just looked dejected. He looked as though he was disappointed, like maybe he thought some angel was gonna swoop in and save him at the last minute or something like that. Um, so I don't know. So when Aaron asks this question, I wonder if Chad didn't want them to do anything more for the mitigation. I don't know, because I didn't see any break in his arrogance until that very last moment. So, I don't know. It's just so odd and very confusing to me. I don't think I'm ever gonna make sense of it.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I think Chad thought that people would come in and speak for him. And I think that was probably his biggest disappointment is when that did not happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder about that. And I wonder how he felt. I wonder if they again, like, I think I said this before, and I'm kind of my mind is spinning in circles now, but I wonder if it was a conscious choice on the part of the prosecution to not do mitigation because maybe they felt like it wouldn't go well, or maybe they felt like it wouldn't make the kind of impression they were hoping on the jury. And then I wonder if they had some things planned and people withdrew, so I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard to know.
It was obvious to me that the jury wasn't buying into any of Mr. Pryor's attempts to be friendly with them or, make some kind of connection with them. I think I even might have seen some eye rolls at times, and um, Prair's really good at keeping a straight face. But you sit there and you try to read their faces, and I felt like I could read some of that in them. Like they just weren't buying any of it toward the end.
Yeah, so here's a question I have for you. Did the judge in Lori's case, did Judge Boyce counsel you as jurors to try and keep your faces expressionless?
Yes, we were told to try not to show any emotion. I don't remember if
Ugh.
that came voiced directly or how that came about, but I do remember that.
Yeah. So to be asked to show no emotion, especially when they were showing evidence of the children's deaths, I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you guys. And when when you guys had reached a verdict and you came back into the courtroom and you had to remain expressionless there, was that difficult as well?
Well, remember, I didn't have to be part of that. I was sitting on the other
Oh,
side
that's
of
right.
when the verdict was read.
That's
But
right.
still, yeah, I mean, it was really emotional, and it was extremely hard, especially since I didn't know for sure what the verdict was going to be until I heard it read.
So, okay, so that's a question I have then. I thought that you guys deliberated for Lori's trial and that you had to say guilty or not guilty. Is that not right?
Well, so I ended up being an alternate, and right
Oh,
before
that's right.
right before the jury went in to deliberate, they pulled numbers out of a hat, and I was excused.
Right.
So I didn't get to see any of that. I had to wait with everybody else
Mm.
to hear the verdict.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that, and that would be hard too. So what were your feelings? when you realized that your vote was not gonna be one of the votes for the final verdict? How did that feel?
So I knew it wasn't about me, but emotionally, that was one of the hardest things, biggest disappointments that I've ever had. It was like I was so invested and I wanted to make sure it went the way that I thought it should go. And for me to not be a part of that after sitting there for, I don't know what it was, 6 weeks with including jury selection. I don't remember exactly, but it was a long time. And I had a lot of my life invested in that. And then I was just excused. So I was sitting there telling myself, oh, this is not about me. You have to just do what they say, get up and walk away. But
Mm,
inside, seething. Um, it felt unfair. It felt all kinds of things. But
yeah,
of
that
course,
must have been devastating.
it was devastating. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But
Were
then
you
out of that courtroom is like, oh, I'm free. So there was that.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been a relief. You're free and you can start to sort of put it behind you a little bit. Did you go home that night after you were not chosen and just spill with your wife, or how did you deal with that? Now you can finally talk about the case.
Yeah, I think we went and had a drink. We were instructed to not talk about the case until a verdict was in.
Okay.
It was definitely a relief, but we still we felt less inhibited in that way. But we still wanted to follow the instructions and not take it too far. Definitely not say anything publicly or anything like that.
Yeah. Was there any part of you that was worried that, well, first of all, when you were excused, did you have in your mind whether you thought she was guilty or not guilty?
Definitely guilty. Um,
Okay.
I was 100% sure that, and I was trying to be objective. I was trying not to have my mind made up before it was proven to me, but um, there was so much evidence. And people ask me if there was one thing that proved it to me, and that's not the case. There wasn't one thing, but there was just so much circumstantial evidence that all added up to only one possible conclusion, and that's that she was guilty. So that's the way I was going to go. And I was pretty sure the other jurors would too, but we weren't able to talk about it. So, there
Yeah,
could,
so that was gonna be my next question. Was there any part of you that was concerned that the jury would not return a guilty verdict?
yeah. So even though we didn't get to talk about the actual case, we got to know each other for sure. And um, there was a couple people who I thought, you know, in spite of all the evidence and everything, that they might possibly go the other way. Um, it wasn't like I wasn't predicting that they would go the other way. It wasn't anything like that. It was more like, well, this person could maybe possibly lean the wrong way. But obviously, that's not what happened.
Yeah, so was that based on their food orders or
Yeah, it was just their personalities, or um, I don't know really how to describe it. It's not like their political beliefs or anything like that, but just personalities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually, the personalities. Okay, so we have a few good questions for you here. Reflections of Me wants to know, Tom, do you think Lori will ever realize the truth of what she did?
I don't think she has any chance of any kind of redemption if she doesn't. I really hope that at some point she realizes what she did. I hope things in the real world start to make sense to her and she can see it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that would be my hope too, but I don't really have a lot of hope that that's actually going to happen, just mainly because I think she's still in her delusion. And one of the channel members asked during the episode for us to clarify that she's able to talk with people. Yes, she's able to text with people on the outside. You can apparently go and get an account and request to talk with her, and you did that, Tom, right? You tried to. Yeah.
I try.
Yeah, and from what I understand, If you are willing to talk about her beliefs and talk about religion, she's happy to talk to you. If you ask her anything about the case, she will not talk to you. And so, according to the person that contacted me that said that they are in contact with Lori, those are the rules that she heard from other people who were talking with Lori also. So I really believe what's happening is that, if people are contacting her and wanting to text with her and she's wanting to teach them about her beliefs, she still has this following of people who want to talk to her. Now, the person who contacted me said that she wasn't really interested in believing what Lori has to say, just interested in what Lori has to say.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting that she is still very much in this religious delusion. She really does think that she's teaching people about the end times and things like that. So I think as long as that perpetuates, as long as she's able to talk to people on the outside and continue to gain followers and potentially have followers on the inside too, I think she'll stay in that delusion because that's a safe place for her. She doesn't have to confront any of the terrible things that she did or that happened or any of that. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of hope that she is going to, you know, have any sort of introspection as long as that's going on.
Well, she's got a lot of time to sit there and contemplate all this.
That's
So
true.
maybe at some point, I hope. But I'm with you. I haven't seen any sign of it yet, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we have another question here. This is about Chad's trial. What do you think of how he was so expressionless or smug? And then the new picture of him as a prisoner. Did you happen to see his updated mugshot?
Yeah.
And what do you think about the difference between those two?
Yeah, I watched him every day for hours, and he was emotionless. He was able to sit there, kind of looking straight forward with his hands folded in front of him. Every now and then, you could see him come. He would try to look to the side without turning his head, in kind of a weird, maybe insecure way, like not really trying to let you know that he's looking at you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, he would do this weird sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
Like,
looked at me a couple of times like he was trying to figure out who I was when I first came into the courtroom, and I
yeah,
got that sort of side eye from him.
yeah, exactly. Experienced it too. So there was that. I found him to be arrogant and smug, and that was insulting, I think. He's putting everybody through all this. And I just kept wondering how can somebody sit there and right in front of all the people that he's hurt so badly, and he can just sit there like nothing's wrong. Um, that was really hard for me to stomach.
Yeah, I think if you spend too much time thinking about the reality of what you've done and how many people you've harmed and realize that all these people are there in the courtroom hoping that you're going to be convicted, I don't think that's something that somebody could just sit through every day, and take for that long.
I think it's just like you said with Lori. I think he feels like he's above it all, and maybe there's more hope for him to you know have normal thoughts maybe and actually think it through and realize his part in all this. I don't know.
Yeah. It's tough to imagine what is even going through either one of their heads at this point, other than delusion.
Yeah, really.
So here's another question. This is a good one. How did you jury members sort out all of the different elements of the Chad Lori story and create a timeline in your minds? How did you connect the elements not having any prior knowledge of the case? It was complicated. There were so many people involved. And so how did you make sense of all of that?
It was so hard to follow. um, I don't think I honestly did make total sense out of it. I still haven't made complete sense out of it all, but by the time Lori's trial was over, uh, I was confused about a lot of things. I had enough information, and I understood the testimony. I understood, the evidence that they presented, but I couldn't necessarily piece it all together like in a timeline or, I was still confused about a lot of things. Um, I had enough, but I even told the prosecution afterwards, when they asked me, I said, I think, you should have presented a timeline and made it more clear to the jury. And then I go back and look at what they presented now, and they did do that. It was just that there was so much at the time to comprehend. I just couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah,
And
it was overwhelming.
yeah, I talking to other jurors, they were in the same boat as I was. We were taking notes, we're paying attention, but it was tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think we'll just answer this one really quick. I don't think that the state did provide timeline graphics for you in Lori's case like they did in Chad's, right?
They did a lot better in Chad's, or either that, or I was just able to understand it better by the time, a year later.
Yeah. Well, once you sat through one trial, right, it was probably a lot easier the second time around to, decipher and unpack everything and figure it all out. I know that, I have some close friends who I've talked to about the case over the course of the last 5 years, and even sometimes they still don't get things straight or remember who what player was and how it's all intertwined. I think I don't really follow true crime. I never have before this. Um, but I think that the main cases that I at least heard of or knew about, it was pretty straightforward. It was like so and so had a relationship and, its significant other unaliving significant other. It's not, just this whole twisted thing, and it just seems like there were so many complicated pieces to figure out and consider. I guess one question I have too is there was so much discussion in Lori's trial about bringing information in from from Charles's murder.
Right.
And I know the judge instructed you that you weren't to consider that evidence as part of this case in finding, guilt or not guilt based on that evidence. But was that the evidence that they brought in from Charles's murder, was it pretty instrumental into you sort of understanding how the stage got set for this in the first place?
How can it not be, right? I mean, the judge can sit there and say, you're going to hear this, but you can't use it to make up your minds. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And you, especially when you're sitting there struggling so hard to understand. And so you're going to use all the information you hear, every bit of it, even if they say, oh, disregard that comment or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, you can't really disregard it. That's
Right.
that's what always really puzzled me is, an attorney can say something, and the judge can say, oh, the jury strike that or whatever. You still heard it. You're
You
not going to,
still heard it.
yeah,
Yeah, and I guess you're not allowed to bring that up during deliberations or to use it to prove your point or any of that, but it still, of course, is gonna have an impact on you because we're human beings. We're gonna have a reaction to that kind of information. I can't imagine what the jury thought. My favorite moment in Chad's trial was when, realtor was on the stand and, Pryor asked him, "How many acres is it?" And the realtor said, "Well, you own it, you tell me." And he said, "Yeah, yeah, that's right, Judge, can I have a sidebar?" Immediately.
yeah,
So
everybody got
how can those moments not have an impact on you as a juror to find out that, that the defense attorney owns the house of and then everything that Pryor says about the house from the beginning of the trial until that moment gets called into question because he's trying to
back
pretend that he doesn't have the information, and to me, that goes to his integrity. So
100% integrity. That to me, I mean, I'd done a lot of research on him, so I already had an opinion about him. But the jurors in Chad's trial, obviously, they didn't know anything about him. This
right.
was, um, but they did hear his questions that he asked in court, and I think that when I heard that guy say that he owned that property, that Mr. Pryor owned that property, I think that really put him in a bad light. And I think the jurors probably did go back and go, wow, what about this question and that question? And how honest is this guy really? Because a defense attorney, I don't think it's your job to lie for your client. I think it's your job to do everything you can, but you should have some personal integrity. And if you lose that, then I don't see how you can really hang on to a jury.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point because even though, the attorney's not on trial, right? But if the attorney's integrity gets called into question, then you're gonna question their tactics, you're gonna question all the witnesses that they call, every rebuttal that they have, every objection that they have, you're gonna say, "Well, this guy doesn't have any integrity." I think that's a really important point to consider because I think about that too the whole time that Pryor was trying to say that there was no second story in the house.
right?
It's like, "Well, you own the property. You know there's a second story. You know there are stairs."
I was
And go ahead.
I was just going to say I was really frustrated with the prosecution at that moment because they weren't questioning it, and I thought, why aren't they jumping all over this? But they were waiting for their moment, and they eventually got to that. They had a witness talk about the fact that there were stairs and there was an office up there and there was electricity and all of that stuff. And
Right.
I think that, the jury, that's another one of those times when the jury's, they're just shaking their heads like, what's Mr. Pryor trying to do here?
Yeah, I don't think that going back and watching it because I did several times because I was so infuriated like you were at that point. I don't think there was a legal basis for an objection to Pryor's line of questioning and for him he was basically trying to impeach that witness and say that she has no credibility because there obviously are there's no he's like there's no second story but you said she came down the stairs. So he was using a tactic there. And I think as a juror, I think I would have heard that he owns the house and then go back and think, "Didn't he try to convince us there was no second story?" And then it's sort of like every line of questioning to
Yeah.
me becomes less credible for that, and I think it's so important. I When you're a defense attorney, I can't imagine, first of all, having the job of a defense attorney because especially when you know your client's guilty, and they probably are a lot of the time. So I can't imagine having to mount a defense. You do want people's constitutional rights to be upheld, and I think that's super important. But I don't know, I just think some of his tactics were underhanded and lacked integrity, and I don't know. I have so many feelings and thoughts about all of that.
Yeah. I tried to be Mr. Pryor's advocate, I guess you would say, um, when the trial started. When people would say bad things about him or whatever, I was trying to say, yeah, but he's got a job to do. He's going to do the best he can. I hope he does a really good job because I thought he would bring out a lot more information in questioning witnesses that we weren't getting in
Yeah.
Lori. And I was really hoping he would do that. And he didn't get as much out of some of the witnesses as I was hoping.
Yeah, and I was like you at the beginning of the trial, and even sometimes later on, I said, He has a he has a job to do, John Pryor, and I'm glad that he's doing his job, and he's doing a good job because that's less chance for appeals down the road. Now, apparently, there are I mean, there's always gonna be appeals in the death penalty case, you can't get around that. The only challenge is, like, how credible are those appeals? Anything that has to do with the judge now, they're trying to say the judge acted improperly. I think that's never gonna hold water because Judge Boyce was so meticulous in the way that he ran his courtroom.
He did. That was one of the really interesting things to me, looking back on it, is how Judge Boyce quietly controlled the courtroom. And I realized more after getting to know different people, like his attorney, his court attorney, the bailiffs, and in my conversations with them, I realized that Judge Boyce has total control over what happens in that courtroom. And also when he didn't allow a certain person back into the courtroom after they failed to stand for the jury, and it was completely a mistake. She didn't mean for that to be that way, and she was
Yeah.
horrified it happened. But um, that's what he does. He's like, "You're not respecting the jury up to the standard that I expect in my courtroom, so you're out."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Goodness. Okay, so I wanna get to a couple more questions here. Lamisa, good to see you as always. Says, "Tom, as much as Lori is complicit, I've always felt Chad is actually the mastermind because I think Lori has shown signs of mental health issues, ignored lifelong. Chad is just evil. How about you?"
I I anticipate this question. It's probably the question I get asked the most.
Yeah.
And I still struggle to answer it really. I think, yeah, I think Lori's crazy. I really do. Um, I think Chad is the religious guru. Obviously, he's the priest holder in the Mormon church, or was. Um,
Yeah.
in that religion, they believe that the man is the priest holder. And so he would obviously have that kind of control over her. He was the one that had the light and dark scale. And if you got to a certain point on that scale, you had to die. He had the ideas. On the other hand, Lori, she's the mom. She's the one person that is the protector of those children more than anybody else on earth. And she allowed that to happen to them and willing to lie about it, and to this day still lie about it. So
Yeah.
they're both equally guilty in that way, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's the question I get asked all the time too, more than anything else is, do you think that Chad and Lori really believe it? And I did a whole video on my channel about it, a whole deep dive. It's one of the most watched videos on my whole channel, because I think it's still the question that everybody has in their mind. And for me personally, I agree with you. I think that the ideas were Chad's. I think the theology was Chad's. I think that Lori, as a follower, I think she did believe Chad. I think she, trusted Chad, but I also think that there was I think they both manipulated each other in some ways.
They totally did. Um, Chad needed followers, um, and Lori needed somebody, I think, to just unconditionally worship her. And so they both kind of fit the mold. They both fit what the other one wanted. And it's amazing to me still that Lori kind of came into his life right when she did. It was kind of a weird moment in time when something like that so horrible could possibly happen. Like
Yeah,
right where she appeared.
yeah, it is really interesting. Um, I think that what was happening was that it all sort of followed this logistical progression where Chad had been writing these books, and then he published Julie Rowe's book, and Julie Rowe's book was more successful than anything he ever wrote, and she talked about near-death experiences, and I think he saw that and went, "Aha, if I change those moments into near-death experiences, I can get the same kind of recognition that Julie Rowe is getting. My books will sell more, I'll be more popular, I can speak more." I think that's really what he was looking after. And
More,
so and what was it?
I will gain more followers that way. That's
Yes. Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And so I think you're right, it was the timing of it where he was seeking notoriety and recognition, and maybe because he was getting more notoriety, that's how Lori noticed him.
yeah,
And it was right up her alley. And then once they met in person, man, it was just like gasoline and oil together, and it just went crazy.
yeah.
I still will never understand. I mean, I I think I did a decent job in the video of explaining how it is I think that they got when they finally met in person, how it is that they were attracted to each other and how it is that they sort of started manipulating each other and all those things. But I still will never understand the delusion that you have to go through, the mental gymnastics that it takes for you to, as an intelligent human being, because I don't think Lori was stupid, and I don't think Chad was stupid. I don't think he was the brightest bulb on the tree, but he obviously had the ability to influence people,
Right.
And so two people who actually have some kind of a brain in their head, for them to delude themselves and each other into believing that what they were doing was right. I think that there's a point at which the animal survival instinct of your brain takes over, and you just start down this path of just whatever it takes for me to get what I need, whatever it takes for me to get what I want, and you become maniacal. I think that's largely what happened.
I think at some point too, there's no going back, right? Like
Yeah.
you choose um, certain paths on your road through life or whatever, and at some point, it's easier just to continue down, even though you know it's wrong. It's easier to just continue down that way, and they took that to just an extreme that is incomprehensible for the rest of us.
Yeah. I think the extremism of it, and you're right, I think, there's a point of no return. Once you get to a certain point, it's like you either have to double down on what you've been preaching and continue to go all the way, or you have to admit you are wrong. You have to admit that you're not a prophet. You have to tell everybody, "You know what? There's nothing to see here. Just move along. I was wrong. I'm just gonna go into a cave and hide for the rest of my life." I don't think that
Right?
was ever an option for either one of them.
Yeah.
So, another question here. During the trial, if you had been able to ask questions of a witness, would you have, and who, and what would you have asked? Is there something that you wish they would have asked and they didn't? What did you want to know?
I have to think about that one for a minute, but there were a few times when the question was so obvious and it wasn't getting answered. Um, I'm not going to be able to come up with it off the top of my head, but there were a couple of times when I was extremely frustrated. I just felt like, why can't I just shout out this question? Because everybody wants to ask this question. And
Was
for
that
whatever,
during Chad's trial?
no, this was during Lori's trial.
During Lori's? Okay.
For whatever reason, they weren't asking the question. And, I just had to sit there and shut up and wait. But yeah, there were times. If it comes to me before we're done, I'll bring it back up. But
Okay. Well, there was for me in particular, anytime that Zulema got on the stand, I was frustrated because I was like, "Just answer the question. Just answer the question." Like, it's a very simple question. Just please answer the question in a straightforward manner.
well,
And it didn't happen.
and I guess if there were one question that I would love to have been able to ask is, um, do any of these witnesses have any guilt in this? Can we just be honest about that?
Yeah.
Is anyone being protected? Do you have a deal with anybody? Um, I would love still to know that, and we really don't know for sure.
Yeah, I remember talking with you about that in the interview that I wish more people would be willing to come out and talk, even just to have a one-on-one conversation because I think that they could alleviate a lot of suffering. I think that they could put some people's fears at rest. I think that they could answer a lot of questions. They choose not to, and, that's their right, but I don't know. It'd be a hard position to be in for sure, 100% to have to come out after all of this and admit that you had some culpability in it and to admit how extensive your contributions were. That would be a really hard thing to do. So I understand why they would wanna keep quiet and disappear and just never talk about it again. But by the same token, I don't know, I think the empathetic part of me would want to alleviate people's suffering, even just to have a one-on-one conversation with Kay and Larry or something and just say they're sorry and, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I was duped." Whatever excuse they wanna offer, but at least just to say, "I'm sorry."
I honestly don't understand. Um, I know it's their right, and I know they might feel like they have something to lose, but I think as a human being, um, some of those people need to come forward and talk about the thing. This, and I think there's a huge need for that, and not just out of our curiosity, but I think because it's going to help us to beware if we're leading up to something like this again, or even there are a lot of dangerous things happening to children that we're not dealing with that we need to deal with. We need to quit sweeping these things under the rug, um, and come to terms with it. And I think having some of these people speak out a little bit could really help with that. And I don't
Yeah.
think, I mean, they have a legal right. I don't think as a human being they have a right to just silently stand by and watch all this unfold and not say anything. I think they needed to say something way back when maybe they could have done some good, at least in helping find the children. Um, but even now, it's just as important that they come forward and they speak out. And if their part makes them guilty, too bad. They should man
Yeah.
up a little and accept that and do what's right. At least one of them, at least one of those people you would think would do that.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out how I would feel at this point, because I don't think, me personally, if I had been in their shoes, I don't think I ever would have gotten to this point, because I think as soon as the children went missing, I would have come forward and said, "Okay, here's what I know. I don't know any, maybe I don't know their exact location, or maybe I don't know exactly what happened to them, but I can tell you this."
Yeah,
And I even did call law enforcement a couple of times, even though I didn't have any evidence. I didn't have any real, concrete anything, but I did wanna say what I did know.
yeah,
Things that I knew that happened in the past that could have implications on what was happening now, because I couldn't just sit there with a good conscience and not say what I did know. So I can't imagine being part of that inner circle and knowing the circumstances of what went on, and maybe not knowing exactly what happened, but having enough information that you could have been helpful. I can't imagine not coming forward. So now at this point, um, I think coming forward is too little too late, but it's something, you know?
yeah. It is too little, too late, but it also would still help
Yeah,
with situations that might occur in the future.
yeah. And
Understand
maybe,
it's still out there,
sorry, please say that again. I think I cut you off.
and understanding the danger that might still be out there.
Right, right. That's something that scares me a lot. We talked about that.
Yeah,
So, um, this is an interesting question. Could part of their legal immunity be not to speak of it ever? I don't know if that's the case. I've never been a part of any kind of immunity agreement, so I can't intelligently answer that question. But next time I talk to my attorney, I will ask. But I do think there's a possibility that some people may have been instructed not to speak until after Lori's trial, since there's still that trial pending. And maybe, and my hope is that we'll get more information about the inner circle during Lori's trial, her next trial.
yeah,
I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to understand their roles better. And I for a long time, wanted to believe that Melanie Pulowski was not really complicit. But the more that I researched and the more that I heard in Chad's trial, I have to say it doesn't look good. Um, in fact, I would, I'd be scared. I was scared for her children when I realized how closely she was involved and how close those kids were to, possibly being taken out of their home. So it's a lot still, there's a lot still pending out there, to me anyway. The trials, while we do get some information, some closure, I know that there's information that law enforcement will never disclose that was not presented at trial, because
right,
it didn't necessarily help their case for convicting Chad. For example, a lot of Alex's actions we're never going to know about because there's no trial for Alex. So it doesn't help the prosecution to bring forth evidence about Alex, or that implicates him. So I think there's a lot of things that will go unanswered unless this inner circle decides to speak up.
yeah. I'm interested to see what happens in Arizona. I hope they do a good job at bringing more out, and I do think that Melanie Boudreau, the attempted shooting of Brandon, looks to me like she was involved in that. So we'll see what they come
Yeah.
up with.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to getting answers. I can't say I'm looking forward to the trial. I can't say I'm excited about it, but I
Yeah,
am invested in it, and I do want to know more about the facts of what happened. So for that reason, of course, I'm going to be watching, and I may be there for a big piece of it. I just haven't decided yet. There's so much of me that just wants to be there every single day. There's another part of me that knows that having that much proximity to my family members is not healthy for me. And being able to watch the trial on a live stream and then step away from it when I need to and listen to it on 2x so that I hear it, but it doesn't quite, I'm such an empathic person that the feelings and emotions that come up stay with me really, really strongly. So I have to measure. I have to just be careful about how much I'm gonna really get involved with it. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I'm going to go. What I decided is I'm going to go for the beginning and see how I think it's going and decide whether it's worth staying for the whole thing or not. I don't know, have any idea how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
Uh, but I definitely want to go for the beginning. I want to reconnect with some people. That's one reason we're going, but also hopefully get some answers.
Yeah, I hope so too. This is a good question. After all the trials and convictions, will you stop following true crime? I want to thank you for giving and helping so much with this case. Best wishes and blessings. I think we're all super appreciative of your service, Tom, and for everything that you've done to help all of us understand this better.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not really a true crime guy, and I think there's enough in this case. I could spend the rest of my life right researching, learning more, trying to get more answers just about this case. And I'm honestly not that interested in other true crime. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But
It's not. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you. I said, but I will stay interested in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really I like I said, never really been a true crime person. Um, but since this case, I've been asked by, a couple of different channels to comment on other crimes that are either similar or related in some way.
Yeah.
And that I do engage in because I think where we see similarities, we see things like this happening again, we see it coming out again. That's the kind of thing I want to try to head off. So I want to be able to talk about those cases and point out this is really eerily similar. This is what we need to focus on. We need to think about so that we can hopefully prevent these things from happening again.
I've had the same experience. People want to interview me about the Kohlberger case. I don't really know that much about it. I know
Yeah.
about it going into Lori's case.
Yeah, there have been a couple, the Corey Richins case I've been asked to comment on, and also the, Jared Bridegan case, just because it has some religious undertones to it. Some of the cultural aspects of Mormonism come into play, but also just the similarities of, selfish women wanting to get what they want and not really caring about the consequences and possibly thinking that they're not gonna get caught. So those are the kind of things that I think we need to recognize these patterns and do better at calling them out.
Yeah, you're right. Patterns.
Yeah. MB says, "Tom, please hug your wife for me. I can't imagine being there, but not able to be there, if you know what I mean. Such a ripple effect." Tom, I love your wife. I so enjoyed spending time with you guys in Boise, and I can't wait to get back up there and spend some more time with you.
We really enjoyed our time with you. And yeah, I hope you do come to Boise. Love to hang out with you some more.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. Reflection says, "You are so kind, Tom, to take such a subject and turn it into good by donating to your worthy charity. Would you please tell us about Hope House and how you're helping out there?"
Yeah, Hope House is great. We just happened upon it. We were really looking hard for a good charity, and we were struggling, honestly, to find a good one. And some of them even turned out to have ties to Chad. And, we wouldn't know this as we were starting to look into them. And then we would find out, ties either directly to Chad or to some of the things that he was involved in. But we came across Hope House totally by accident. Met a really nice young man who grew up there, and he told us all about it. And we thought, oh, maybe this is just kind of meant to be. And it was. We started researching them and got to know the directors, um, and they were awesome. We were able to go out and hand over the first royalty check to them about a month ago. That was really exciting for us.
That's really sweet, and Hidden True Crime did a little mini episode on that, right, when you were there visiting the people. I recommend that to anybody to go and watch. It's very heartwarming and so exciting to see some good coming from this tragedy.
Yeah, that really felt good. And Hope House is amazing. If people want to look them up, donate money, whatever, they could definitely use all the help they can get. They're doing really good things.
Yeah,
They home education. They're not affiliated with any particular church, but they provide a religious background. Um, so they really do provide a home for children that are in extreme need. A
yeah,
lot of lives are really in danger when they come to Hope House and they get saved.
yeah, that's amazing. I'm so grateful that you're able to do that, and I really think it's wonderful that you did so much work to research charities and, find a place that is really doing some good in the community. So that's really awesome to see.
Thank you.
So I have, I think, one more question that I'm going to start, guys, in the chat. This is your last chance to ask Tom a question live here, and we'll see if he's able to answer. He will. Just before we go, there is one more question pending that I want to put up there. But before we answer it, I just want to say, please go to the Amazon link that we posted, buy Tom's book, support Hope House by buying the book, and go to Hidden True Crime, watch Tom's interviews there as well. Are there any of your other interviews that are some of your favorites? What are some of your favorites that you've done, or what would you want people to see?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
My favorite? Oh, there's been so many. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think talking to you, uh, talking to Lauren on Hidden True Crime, and Dr. John, and any of those interviews are all good. But there's been others too. I can't think of them right now, but
Yeah. Yeah, so TC, rewind just a little bit. We did talk about this, about going to Lori's trial in Arizona. We'll both be there at some point, just haven't decided when, and hopefully we'll get to meet up there as well.
we're going to
And
coordinate. Make
yeah,
sure
we'll
we.
make sure we're there at the same time, at least for overlapping for a day or two, so we can hang out.
Yeah.
Um, so this is not a question, but a comment from McSpunky. It's a cult. Ask me how I know. I'm just going to put this plug in here. McSpunky and I have been talking about the possibility of him coming on and doing an interview. I know that people would love to hear from you. So I don't want to pressure you, but I'm just saying, people would love to hear from you. And Tom can attest, I ask softball questions.
No, I wouldn't say softball questions, but some people are good at interviewing, and some people, are able to make a person feel comfortable being interviewed, and some people just aren't that good at it. But you're one of the good ones.
Well, thanks. I just try to have a conversation. I ask the questions I'm curious about, and I hope that resonates with the audience. And I think, obviously, you can see from the comments, people are positive, and they are so grateful that you've come on, and grateful that you're serving, and looking forward to your next book. I'm super excited about that too. When do
Thank
you
you.
think that one's going to come out?
Uh, I don't know. I'm working away on it. Depends on publisher. Depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm hoping early next year, but we'll see.
All right. So maybe before Lori's trial.
Possibly. But then
Yeah.
I'm third book after that one's over, so I don't know.
That's true. You almost have to start writing the 3rd book before the 2nd one gets published, so you don't fall behind. TC wants to know, do you ever have a day that you don't have a thought about the trial?
No. Something happens every day that brings it back to my mind, even if I'm doing something like here I am in Alaska and spending time with my family, and we're talking about other things, but something will always come up every day, multiple times every day. It makes me think about it. And if that doesn't happen, I'll be laying in bed with my own thoughts or whatever. And that's what the first thing that creeps into my head.
Yeah. That's such a burden to have to bear, and I'm grateful that you found a way to turn it into something good. I'm grateful that you're writing about it to help you heal, and I'm grateful that you're getting the information out to other people to help them heal. And I'm grateful that your book is supporting an excellent cause because then maybe the suffering is worth it.
Thank you. And the same to you. I mean, we're like a team, right? We're
Yeah.
working thing. The same things motivate us both.
Yeah, I think that's true. For me personally, there are days when I don't think about it. I think though that is number 1, it's a little bit of a luxury to be on this side of 2 trials and to have days where I don't think about it, where I don't have to think about it. But not a single episode goes by that somebody doesn't ask me a question about Lori. Not a day goes by when I don't think, there's so much other content that I could and should make about about the trial. I really could dive into it. I need brain breaks though, so I try to be intentional about only giving so much of my time and energy to thinking about the case and the trial. And that's largely why my channel is about healing, because it can be about healing from anything. It doesn't have to be about healing from this particular thing, but it does come up almost every time that I talk about healing, anytime I have an episode. And so I don't think that it's anything that's ever going to just completely be gone from my life. And knowing that it's permanently a part of my story, my life story, my family story, I have to do the best I can to make a good thing come of it, hopefully, to help open people's eyes to manipulative, harmful behavior, to hopefully encourage people to call out that behavior when they see it instead of letting it go, sweeping it under the rug, and to hopefully prevent further tragedies from happening. That's all I can do.
You're doing it.
I hope so. It feels like it's reaching some people in my small, tiny little corner of the internet.
All anybody can do.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for your time. So grateful for you. I always just feel like I don't even know who's watching or if it's even getting out there, but you and I are having this great conversation.
Well,
It
yeah, we need to get caught up too, and talk about things outside of the trial.
Yeah, just life and happiness and future and things like that. Oh, and you heard it here first, everybody. McSpunky, we're gonna make it happen. He's gonna come do an interview. If you wanna pick Tom's brain, McSpunky, and tell him, what to watch out for.
Yeah, he can get a hold
So,
of me.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I don't.
Well well, sorry, what was that?
I don't know who he is, but he's well.
McSpunky's one of my favorites. I see him all over the true crime channels. He's always gifting memberships. He's always super kind and welcoming to everyone in the chat. He's a good dude, and I'm really excited to have a conversation with him. I think people love him because he's just so generous and kind all the time. So I want to hear his story, and I want to get it out there. So
Cool.
yeah, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your time in Alaska. Tell us some of the things you're going to do.
We're heading for home tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
But the trip is kind of part of the adventure. We get to take the ferry from Haines to Juneau, and then we fly home from there, and that's not exciting. But the ferry trip is always really pretty. There's usually whales and stuff to look at.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear about all your adventures. What's been your favorite thing so far?
Spending time with my daughter and son-in-law, and they're awesome. They take us out fishing in their boat, and we don't have to like charter a fishing boat or anything like that. We just go do it on our own, and
Yeah,
that just makes the whole thing so much better.
that's so cool. I definitely think that the only thing that I really care about in my life now for the rest of my life is just spending time with good people and the people that I love. So anytime you
Yeah,
get to do that, it's a great day.
it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. I've taken up 2 hours of your time away from your family, so I'm so grateful for you, and let's make sure that we connect again soon.
Well, I got to say, I really appreciate you having me on, and I feel the same way about our conversations. They're always great and easy.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, channel members and subscribers. Please like the episode on your way out. Please subscribe if you can. It's totally free. It's the best way to support the channel. And I am a full-time podcaster now. So if you feel so inclined to become a member, it would be really helpful. And if you like the episode, it helps it get out in the algorithm to make sure that more people see it and more people hear it, hear the message of healing and heal with their families. Thank you so much for being here tonight and contributing to our discussion. And please take good care of yourselves and each other.